Good day, Stewart's Chapel. This is Brother Don Pierson, and this is Friday's devotion, and we're continuing our look at Jesus, the Christ, the Messiah, being the fulfillment of prophecy. As we look into Matthew again, chapter 2, verse 16 through 18, it says, Then Herod, that is after the Magi had come to him, and he realized that they were not coming back to tell him where they found the Christ child. It says, Then Herod, when he saw that he was deceived by the wise men, was exceedingly angry, and he sent forth and put to death all the male children who were in Bethlehem and in all its districts from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had determined from the wise men or the Magi. What an incredible, sad verse. The death of these children, of these young boys, is horrendous. A Pharaoh had done the same thing to the Israelites hundreds of years earlier. But this is an Israelite doing it to his own. The Pharaoh had done it to try and stop God's plan in blessing Israel. This king of Israel does it for the same reason. He does it in order to try and stop God's plan. He's very much aware that the Messiah is coming, and he is foolish enough to think that he, by some authority and power that he has, can stop God from doing what God is going to do. Anyway, in verse 17, it says that when Herod did this, that this was fulfilled. This was the fulfillment of what was spoken by the prophet Jeremiah. In chapter 31, verse 15, the prophet Jeremiah said, A voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation, weeping, and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be confronted because they are no more. Rachel was the great matriarch for Israel, or as before he was known as Israel, his name was Jacob. And Jacob had loved Rachel. She was the matriarch. Ramah is near where her tomb is, and it was in that area. This lamentation of Jeremiah was a picture of the women of Israel as they watched the Babylonians take their sons and children into slavery and to deport them away from them. They grieved. This was understood by the scribes and the prophets to also be a prophecy about the Messiah, how man would try to stop the plans of God. How small and insignificant our thinking must be when we ever think that we can stop to prevent the plans of God. There was no surprise about the evil ways of man to God. God was very much aware of the evil that was in man, that would dare seek to slaughter innocent children from an entire area. But he also knew what man would do to his own son. Because you see, this effort of Herod was not intended for all these innocent children. It was intended to kill the Messiah, the Christ. And so from the very beginning of Christ's coming, it was a time where he was hunted by all men. He will die, but he will die in the time that God has set aside, and that time it will be for sacrifice, and that is our Lord. He came knowing. Our God was fully aware what we would do. You know, man often tries to create their own destiny, tries to stop the plans that God has for them, like Jonah running, like me running, like you running. God has a plan for your life. You can do all you want. You cannot defeat God. You can't kill God. Man can do all that they can to try and wipe out the existence of God, but it is an impossible task. Instead of trying to wipe God out of your life, why don't you seek him? That's what Herod should have done. That's what you should do. Love you, Stewart's Chapel.